Coming up, we're talking all about Mobile World Congress in Barcelona that's just wrapped up, and Apple have announced things.
You're listening to Double Time, your daily accessible technology show. Now, here's your hosts, Stephen Scott and Shaun Preece.
Right, look, before we get into this today, right, I think we have to raise an issue. A point of order, sir. A point of order.
Okay, I haven't even said it. Hello, listeners. Okay, now please carry on. What?
Thank you. Please, if you don't mind. I'm trying to raise a point of order here. Look, I think, we're getting a few bits of feedback suggesting we maybe talk a lot about Apple. I know that might shock some people. I know.
Breaking news.
Yeah, I know. But we do talk a lot about Apple because it's just so good. I love it. They've brought lots of new toys. They've brought lots of things out today. I want to talk about it. I also want to mention, by the way, we've been playing around with video editing software. Now, I admittedly have done a lot of video editing in the past visually and trying to move away from that because it's getting more and more challenging. And I know I don't use a quarter of the features inside the app I use, which is Final Cut Pro. But it was starting to irritate me the other day. So I thought, I really want to figure this out. And I wanted to know how accessible it was. And it does feel a bit like a dumpster fire when you start using it because, you use VoiceOver, you're going through so many different areas, groups. You've got to interact with groups to get to other groups, to within the groups. It's like trying to be popular at school again. Who do you talk to? Where do you go? It's impossible.
We sit on the table on our own, Stephen Scott.
Well,
that's where we go.
Well, crying. Yeah, exactly. And it's the same result I had with Final Cut. So I called you and I said, look, there must be another way around this. What about Windows? What's on Windows? Now, of course, I realized this would mean I'd have to sell every computer I own and then go and buy another really powerful PC. So it seemed a little bit excessive, but I thought it's well worth looking into because you had played briefly, albeit briefly, with Clipchamp, which is, I guess, the equivalent of iMovie for Windows.
Yeah, well, it ships. Well, it's in every copy of Windows, but it's also available via the web. So you can use it on Mac or anything where you can, get to a website. So, as the screen readers call it, Clipchamp. When it started becoming part of Windows, I thought, let's look into that. And I did struggle with it a little bit, but as I said, I looked at it last in 2023, so I was hoping it had evolved a little bit.
It does seem as if it has evolved, and certainly the thing that got me was when I just searched for Clipchamp screen reader accessibility blind help I know nothing into Google. It came up with some responses, and the responses took me straight to an article in the Microsoft or on the Microsoft website, which gave me full details on how to use it with a screen reader. And I've got to say, kudos to Microsoft for the detailed information. What we're always looking for, aren't we? We're always looking for the same thing. Whenever we go for or look for information, as soon as we hear, and with a mouse, you just click on this or you drag on that. You're like,
of course.
No.
Yeah.
Because that's just a nightmare. I don't want that. I want to know how it'll work. I want to know how it'll work for me because, as you know, it's all about me.
Well, it's just not relevant to us. Click on this with a mouse. Obviously, it's not. And okay, so if I can get to it with a mouse, how do I get there? If the standard navigation of tab and arrow keys isn't working, but I've got to agree with you. I think Microsoft are doing a good job. I mean, I'm always slightly nervous about saying this because then someone will get in touch and say, "Well, actually, they've got no info on this or that or this."
Yeah, there's always something.
But
yeah.
I found that if I do search for, especially the major ones out there, if you search for Outlook screen reader in Google, there will be an article out there. Now, how in-depth it is another matter. But I find that they're actually pretty good.
Yeah, it is really good. And I was quite impressed, actually. So I had a play and I was able to kind of figure out what I was doing. It seemed fairly logical. Certainly, it's not as fully fledged as an editor like Final Cut Pro is. But that's okay, because I don't really need all the things that Final Cut offers. It's just because the workflow we are in with the production company we're part of here, it's kind of like that's what we use. So that's the reason. Now, of course, I played with it. I thought this is really cool. I then learned how terrible my PC was, because when I exported a file that we were playing around with, it took like an hour and a half to render out the file. And I thought, there's no way I could use this every day. I just couldn't use that. I mean, just for equivalence, on the Mac using the Final Cut software, the render time for the same file was 15 minutes. So you see why I'm using that, right? But that's on a very powerful Mac, it's the M4 Pro.
And that's
inside
a
the Mac Mini.
56-minute video clip.
Yeah, that's right.
So on the but on the PC, that was 1.5 times real time.
Yeah.
Whereas, and if you're trying to turn something around to hit a deadline, that's not going to work.
Ideal.
So from hour and a half to 15 minutes, Mac wins easily.
So then it brought me back to the Mac again, right? And I'm thinking, okay, so that's not going to work without spending some serious money on hardware. What about the Mac? Is there a way I can do this? Now, there are a couple of tutorials online. I'll name check Taylor Arndt as one person who has done some work on this and has published some videos on YouTube kind of going through how to do this. But it is a challenge to kind of navigate your way around this app. There's a lot in it. And so you really just have to spend the time. And what I did was I started with going into what's called the command sets, which show you all the keyboard commands for it. And I know a lot of people do that. They tend to kind of, once they figure out what the shortcuts are, they can tend to sort of work around everything else, right? So I know how to navigate around the various groups, if you like, of the app. And this is the case for any app. Once you've kind of got the layout, once you've kind of got the understanding of the layout, where things are, and how to shortcut your way to them, and all apps have got this, right? I mean, on Outlook, for example, on the Mac, it's Command 1 for mail, Command 2 for calendar, Command 3 for people, I think it is. I never go beyond that, to be honest. But yeah, never go beyond the calendar.
What more do you need?
But ultimately, you can move around the section. So you don't have to go to a button. You don't have to find your way, interact your way into a button to get to the bit that says calendar. You can just shortcut to it. And that's the case with these.
Frenzy for Windows users.
That's right.
Absolutely.
And I'm sure Windows will be the same, right? There's similar equivalents on Control 1, Control 2 to move around.
Yeah, exactly.
Apps like that. So yeah, anyway, I did that. I searched around. And, I have to say, Shaun, who knew that if you spend a bit of time reading into this stuff and actually, getting to grips with it, it actually is all possible. And, I had no doubt it would be. And again, you have to be careful with what you read on the internet because you have to check the dates of when you're reading some of these articles. Some articles say, apps like that are just impossible to use on the Mac with VoiceOver. Yes. But again, it depends when it was written. A lot's changed in those days. And of course, this is essentially, it's not a built-in app. You have to buy it separately, but it is an Apple app. So I kind of had the confidence that it would have the accessibility in it. And the one thing I'll say, no, I knew it would be there. I just needed to figure it out. It wasn't the accessibility that was the problem. It was the usability. It was the understanding it. And
I think it was the user.
The user had a big part to play in it as well, I guarantee you. But you know what? I'll tell you what it comes down to, and it's a reality of a lot of us face with low vision, in that you tend to kind of override the need to learn it using a screen reader if you can just get away with it the way you're getting on, because that way you can get what you need done, right? That's the point. You want to get things done. So you override it. Look, we've been wanting to learn to use Reaper, the audio editor, for so long. But because we're in such a workflow and we're on deadlines, you can't just muck around in the same way that you would, if you're just testing something out or you're playing with something. It's different. You're not going to have the time to spend on it, and you need that time. So sometimes it's just taking the bull by the horns, I think, and just saying, right, I've got to do this. And that's what I did over the week.
Yeah, no, and it was so well worth doing, right? As it often is. But it's a bit of a chicken and the egg situation, right? Because looking through the keyboard shortcuts list in settings, in preference, no matter what the app is, right? Even in an OS, in the case of VoiceOver on the iPhone, going through the command gestures, to see all the different commands that are there can be incredibly useful. But at the same time, a lot of the time you think, okay, so it's this keyboard shortcut to do what? I think one you mentioned was next pick.
Next pick, yeah.
Okay, what on earth does that actually mean? What does that do? And it's not until you actually start using the software and knowing how it works, how the whole process goes, that you figure, oh, that must mean for that. But then you don't really get into using the software until you know the keyboard shortcut. So
and that particular command, that particular one, was the exact command I needed to do what I needed to do, right? That was the one thing that was really hampering me. And when I would look online for documentation on it, it would say there is no keyboard shortcut for this. But there is. It's right there. So, people just didn't know. They didn't know what that was. Maybe they didn't have a clue what that meant.
Well, it's a funny name for one thing. Next pick. It's not very, for selecting the next clip that you may have split out of a video.
But anyway, the point is,
thought that was it.
The point is that Clipchamp is certainly usable now. if you were interested in making some movie. And there's some cool things in there, like AI projects that will take images and music and it can kind of make a little video for you. You know, we're not talking here about feature film, right? I mean, you don't have to, you can use this for pictures of the family.
Who knows?
Well, who knows? But most people, let's be honest, most people might be taking some pictures and think, hey, it'd be nice to put a slideshow together, take a music track, get some images, put it together into something. That's where Clipchamp can be really good. iMovie as well, although I haven't really used iMovie much. I just moved straight to Final Cut years ago, so I never used iMovie. But, I mean, from my understanding, it will be very similar. In fact, it should be ideal for that kind of purpose.
Isn't that what you just, all of these iMovie, Clipchamp, I just assume these are for making slideshows for, you know, your family celebration, for your own use, right? This is what I assume this stuff is for. But of course, so many people go on YouTube and places like that now that actually they may be pushing it a little bit further. And I was quite surprised, as you mentioned, you know, there's transitions in there. You can add a AI voiceover and, you know, just type and pick a voice. And I think we should put the link to the article about, you know, keyboard shortcuts and Clipchamp in the Clipchamp.
I know that's what it's called, isn't it? When you bring it up,
it's like Pixie Bot. Sorry, it's just stuck in my head.
That's right.
Clipchamp in the show notes because it is very useful.
It is. Well worth checking out. And I know lots of you are always asking me about, you know, ways to edit video, and that's one cool thing you can do. You know, you've got the option on both Windows
Reaper
and on Mac. Yeah, I don't know about Reaper. I need to figure that out. I've heard some mixed opinions from people who use Reaper all the time. They say, yeah, it's okay for video, but it really is an audio editor. The video is like an extra component to it, but it's not really a video editor in that true sense, I don't think.
I thought something a good friend, Garth Humphries, told me the other day was he was editing his own wedding video, and he was using
Did he film it
Gemini.
as well?
What?
Did he film it as well?
Yeah, he did actually. Yeah. It was available on Zoom for those of us that couldn't make it to Australia.
Okay.
So he had that, and he actually recorded the audio on their Apple Watches. And you know what? It was really good. Anyway, he was putting it together, you know, and he had the raw video, but then he wanted to put some photos in certain places. And what he was doing was using Google Gemini, the live video feature. As he was editing, he would simply say, are the photos there? Describe what you can see. And, you know, if it matched up with what he thought he had put in, he was fine. He used live video AI to help him edit a video, and it turned out really well.
That's amazing.
I thought that's a really cool use, actually.
That's a brilliant, what a great tip. And, you know, this is where this kind of AI can enable us to do so much more than we could do before, right? I mean, editing video blind, but it is possible. The tools are there.
You know what you want to do, but it's just a case of just confirming, did this do what I wanted it to do? Because we can't do it visually, but this can.
Well, I like that. That's really good. Just a quick tip as well. I mentioned to you before I had some issues with my watch, my Apple Watch, where when I would go outside for whatever reason, it would get so loud it would be unbearable to use. I would actually be nervous using it because it was so loud, and yet when I came back home, it always seemed to behave itself again. I couldn't understand what was going on. Well, there's a setting in VoiceOver, and it's called Improve Speech Clarity. And that's exactly what that feature is for. I must have turned it on because it's not on by default, I don't think. But, you know, basically that's what it does. It detects the volume around you and the noise around you and amplifies VoiceOver so you can hear it. But you don't have much control over how much it amplifies it by, so therefore it will just start yelling at you. But it's kind of important to know that's there, and it's good if you do struggle to hear it outdoors. But also, if you have had issues where your watch seems to be loud in one place and not the other, that's maybe why. And
where is that setting?
It's in the watch app itself. Now, you can do it on the watch itself, or you can find it in the watch. I tend to just search for these things when I'm looking for them. I think it was under VoiceOver, under audio. You should find it in there, and you should be able to.
So it is.
It's on the watch app settings, not on the settings of the phone.
But it is an accessibility setting, is the point.
Yes, it is.
Yeah. Okay. That's actually a really good idea.
It's built for VoiceOver.
Yeah. Well, the amount of times, you know, where you go out and you're trying to turn the volume up because you can't hear because of traffic, right?
Yeah.
So, it sounds good. I'm going to look for that.
Yeah. Little tip for you there. Right, look, let's move on because lots to talk about today. We're going to be covering Mobile World Congress. Chris Lewis is joining us. He's the founder and director of Lewis Insight. He's been at Mobile World Congress this week from the point of view of the telecommunication industry. He's an industry analyst and someone who knows all about all this stuff. Chris is a regular listener to the show, and he's a lovely guy. He's going to be joining us shortly from his home, where I think he's quite pleased to be. so he'll be with us shortly. But first, let's talk about some of the big announcements that have come up from Apple this week. A couple of big announcements, actually. They seem to be moving away from the events. I mean, there was plenty in the past week to certainly warrant an event, but they didn't have one.
Do you think so?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
God, yeah, absolutely. Well,
really?
I mean, this one alone, I mean, this is a huge announcement. So they've just unveiled the new Mac Studio, which I've got to say, no one was predicting this. No one was predicting a new Mac Studio until the last day before the announcement. So this is, of course, next to the Mac Pro, this is a pretty beefy little Mac, right? It's bigger. It's almost like double the height of a Mac Mini. But what they've now got in there is, and this is where it gets a bit weird, they've got the M4 Max, which you might expect. That's the top end of the range when it comes to M4 processors at the moment. Mm-hmm. And also a new M3 Ultra chip in there. Now, I have to say, I'm a bit confused by this. So you've got the M4 Max, M3 Ultra. Okay.
Which one did you think was the top dog?
Well, you'd think M4 Max, right? Because it's got a bigger number.
Bigger number, bigger processor, of course. But it's not.
No, the M3 Ultra is the better one, which makes no sense at all.
Ultra.
But,
that makes all the difference.
Yeah, maybe that's the thing. Wow. Max or Ultra? Now we're debating. It feels like a very semantic discussion. But anyway, it's got Thunderbolt 5 in it, as you would expect, up to 512 gig of unified memory. Not hard drive, by the way, 512 gig of memory.
RAM, we're talking here. Half a terabyte of RAM capacity, yes.
Average is 16. We always say, oh, look, 16's a good number. 512 up to on this. Goodness me. And you can also go up to 16 terabytes solid state drive. That's a huge hard drive. Clearly, this is not for everybody, right? But this is a cool machine. If you are into serious work, if you're making apps, if you're doing AI stuff, this is absolutely the machine for you. We're not going to spend a lot of time talking about it because I don't think any of us who are listening to this are going to be buying one of these.
Why not? I want one.
Would you want one? You would never use this in a month of Sundays. You could get away with a Mac Mini base level and it'd be as fast as you need.
This is the second from the top when it comes to the computer sides of Apple. You got the Mac Pro right at the top there, and then this one. It's incredibly powerful. That M3 Ultra, actually, the amount of cores in there it's just amazing. But yeah, the point is, it's also incredibly expensive.
Well, it's available from today if you wish to choose to pre-order one. In terms of price, it's hilarious, right? Because, of course, you have the starting price.
Yes.
And then you have the price. And everyone does this. They always go straight on. I do this as well. You go straight onto the Apple website and you max it out with every additional customizable option there is. And you get to the price, which is unbelievable. But the Mac Studio starts at 2,699 Canadian dollars. And of course, you can lose $300 off that if you're an education customer, which is great. So if you're a student, that's cool. The 2,699 is the starting price. That, of course, goes all the way up to like 20,000 Canadian. I did mine on the UK store, and it was like £14,500 British pounds.
How many did you get?
I bought nothing.
Did we all get one, Stephen?
No. Short answer, no. Absolutely not. It's a great machine. It's a very powerful machine. It's not for everybody, for sure. But yeah, they did announce it, and it's a very powerful device. The base model, I find the base model to be hilarious because it has still got 512 gig RAM in there. Solid state
SSD
space in there. And you think, really? You couldn't put a terabyte in there for that price? Really, Apple? You couldn't? No.
It is the old nickel and dime argument about memory, and I totally agree with you. Yeah.
But what people are going to be talking about today, I think more importantly, is the new MacBook Air, which has come with the M4 chip and a gorgeous new sky blue color. Woo! Blue!
As soon as I heard that sky blue, I knew you'd be going, oh, that's nice. A color. Who cares?
I know, I couldn't care less. I've looked at these images. I couldn't tell the difference between silver and blue if you tried. I'm told there is a difference between them. I can't tell. Just looks like a laptop to me. But yeah. Anyway, this comes with 18 hours of battery life. That's the one thing about MacBook Air. You genuinely get great battery life on Macs and MacBooks in particular. It's got a new 12 megapixel center stage camera, which is better. I think it was an 8 or 10 perhaps in the last one.
Yeah, I think so.
Enhanced external display support as well. So let's talk about this. So you've got the color, which is sky blue. Everyone seems to be rather excited. Even people who would never buy one of these are excited about it. Also joining midnight, starlight, and silver to complete the, in quotes from Apple, brilliant array of color choices.
Don't care.
I think you could have done more. And also, by the way, if you buy it in sky blue, you get a MagSafe charge cable that's color matched. Just saying.
Oh, that's beautiful. That's so Apple. Okay, I'll give you that.
So
Please
you've got,
move on.
M4 chip featuring powerful 10-core CPU, although it starts at 8-core if you're buying the base model, up to 10-core GPU, and it will support, for the first time, up to 32 gigabits of unified memory, as long as you bump up to the second model, which has got that 10-core CPU in it. You can get up to 32 gig of RAM. That makes it 2 times faster than the M1 model back in the day, 2020, when we first saw the MacBook Air with the Apple Silicon in it.
How many times faster?
2 times faster.
2 times. M4, 2 times. Okay, I'll go with that.
Yeah. Okay, well, here's some stats to help you along with this. So video editing, it says in iMovie, we're just talking about that, is up to 8 times faster than the fastest Intel-based MacBook Air, and up to 2 times faster than the 13-inch MacBook Air with M1. So, that makes sense.
Yeah, okay. We'll go with that.
This is an interesting one. Web browsing is up to 60% faster. That's a pretty big number when compared to a PC laptop with an Intel Core Ultra 7 processor, and more demanding tasks get up to 2 times faster performance.
Okay, very nice. I'm not blown away by anything yet. Okay.
Well, and the camera as well, of course, the 12 megapixel camera with that center stage, which is kind of cool. So if you're moving around in the frame, it will move with you. It's not physically moving. It's all software driven. But great if you've got a bunch of people on a call as well, because, you know, if you have someone walk in the room and stand next to you, the camera will actually zoom out and bring you both into the frame, which is really nice. Great on the iPad. We do this all the time at home, you know, with mum and dad. They're always, you know, one wanders into the camera and suddenly they're in shot, you know, and they get the camera zooms in on them, which is really
nice. It's like having your own personal cameraman.
That's right, yeah. Or
it works well, actually, yeah.
Yeah.
Now, tell me about the external display support. Enhanced, what? What's that?
So basically we get enhanced display support, so you can now power multi-display setups to make viewing and interacting with content a breeze for anyone from business professionals, you can tell reading this, to office
marketing.
multitasking, blah, blah, blah.
Okay.
So basically you can now support up to 2 6K external displays in addition to the built-in Liquid Retina display. I think when the first one came out, you could plug in a monitor and that was it. I don't even know if you could do, you could use the existing monitor that was in it.
This is all down to the Thunderbolt 5, I would assume, or what Thunderbolt?
So this will have Thunderbolt 4 in it. This will have Thunderbolt 4, yeah.
Yeah, so it's the bandwidth that you can connect to, and of course the bump in the processor supports more bandwidth as well. So it's funny talking about this stuff because it used to be displays were just displays. That's it. Yeah. But now you're talking 6K. The amount of data that's got to be sent to send those amount of pixels to those things is huge. They got to compress it or not in some cases. So yeah, that's cool if you need that. I don't personally, but nice.
So pricing starts from $13.99 Canadian. That's $9.99 US and UK. And you've got a 15-inch model as well that starts with the M4 chip at $16.99. Again, you can, that's Canadian dollars, but you can save some money if you're an education customer. Again, the colors are available to you, so you have lots of different options. But that is a very popular machine without a doubt. And it's one of those examples of where Apple, they say they're providing, and you know, in the US, what they say is, well, we're providing you a laptop which is under $1,000, and they are by exactly 1 cent.
Yeah, technically they are. Yeah.
But that comes, the base model comes with 256 gig solid state drive. That is not enough. I'm sorry, that is not enough for, unless you're living in the cloud. Then, and you know, a lot of applications do nowadays. If you are using Google Docs, if you're not using Outlook or anything really PC, you know, like Microsoft based, unless you're using that in the cloud, you know, you're going to need some more space than that.
Well, it depends what you're using it for. You know, if you're just browsing the web and doing the odd email, it's going to be absolutely fine. But in that case, surely an iPad would do you, but actually probably better.
Well, it's a good job they brought some iPads out, isn't it? Yeah, they've just introduced new. What have they brought out here? They brought out the new iPad Air.
Airs.
Yes, and this has now got the new M3 chip as well, and new Magic Keyboard with the same starting price of just $799 for the 11-inch model and $1,099 Canadian for the 13-inch model. So yeah, this is you getting the iPad Air, which is essentially the same device as last time around, but the difference being, of course, that spec bump with the processor now. You're getting the M3 chip in there. And they are talking about this new Magic Keyboard, which is, thankfully, back compatible. Can you imagine if they were selling that and you had to sell your old iPad Air in order for it to connect to this?
I'm sorry, how much is that?
So
the keyboard. Okay, sorry. Go on.
Yeah, the price of the keyboard is coming in at starting price $379 Canadian. That's for the 11-inch one. $399 Canadian for the 13-inch one. Because of course, as I mentioned, the iPad Airs come in two flavors: 11-inch and 13-inch. Yes, that's the price. It's ridiculous.
That keyboard. I'm sorry. That is. I don't even know what to say about that. That is some price. When we're talking about the iPad, as Apple have pushed before, being, the laptop replacement, I mean, power-wise, absolutely. M3 chip in there, fantastic. But then, you add this to it. I'm sorry, that's some price.
Yeah, it is, 100%. And, I don't know. I mean, I think the iPad is an interesting one. And I find iPads just generally an interesting sell. Because I just think of them personally as leisure devices. I don't really think of them as devices you might work on. Now, I know people do, and that's what the iPad Pro is really good at. But I just don't know if I would put the iPad Air, because especially, I'm going to talk about the other one, because it's not the only iPad they announced. They announced the iPad no name.
I believe it's iPad. The 11. Some people refer to it. Is it the 11th gen, this one?
That's right. And they've announced that as well, which is kind of cool. That is a much cheaper one. And to me, that's the one that you'd have. That's like your family iPad. They call it, and they used to call it the Apple iPad for education, because it does have that cheap education pricing that goes along with it. And they have upgraded that as well. They've put it to, they've got an A16 Bionic chip in there, which they say is 30% faster than the previous one. So you'll see a 50% improvement in overall performance as well. And there's an equivalent keyboard you can get to go with that as well. And I just don't know what more you would need when it comes to an iPad. How not powerful are these things? I've got a little iPad mini. It's great. It does all I need it to do. I don't find it struggles with anything. Well,
no, absolutely. Let's be fair. Like the MacBook Air, the iPad Air range is incredibly popular. It is that middle ground, right? You have the iPad Pros, and then you have the entry-level iPad 11, or whatever you want to call it, and then the iPad Airs in the middle. So they are incredibly popular, but I'd really like the iPad, I must say, but I've got absolutely no reason to buy it. We could get into if I've got an iPhone and I don't care about the screen.
And we've had this chat, right? I mean,
we have, that's what I'm saying.
No, we use them as well. We use them all the time.
I really don't want to get into that. But the one thing that would make me get an iPad now is the ability to make it multi-user login. So I can just throw it in the living room, and you know what? If Sarah wants to use it, the Face ID recognizes her, logs into her account. If I want to use it, same. Until I get that, I don't really see the use case for me for an iPad.
Yeah, because otherwise you'd have to buy one iPad each, and who would that benefit? Let me think. Okay, look, let's talk pricing here. So iPad Air, just for comparison. So iPad Air with the M3 chip starts at $799. Of course, that's for the Wi-Fi model. It goes up, of course, to get different configurations. And obviously cellular as well. And $999 Canadian for the Wi-Fi. Oh, sorry, yes, Wi-Fi plus cellular starts at $999. So there you go. And it goes on from that with the 13-inch model. Of course, you can get the keyboard. We talked about the pricing there. The new iPad, it starts with 128 gig of storage. That's its base model. Previously, it was 64 gig, so that's good. And you can also upgrade it with 256 and 512. iPads are always difficult to judge with what's best to do for storage. I mean, again, so much in the cloud, more so I would say with an iPad. So 128 gig wouldn't be a concern to me. The price also appeals, I've got to say. The starting price of $499 Canadian going up to $699 if you add cellular to that. It's a much more affordable iPad. And you can get that.
Actually very nice.
I mean, it's funny though, because that Magic Keyboard Folio for that iPad is $329 Canadian. It's almost the same price as the iPad itself, which makes no sense at all.
I believe I've read somewhere that they've knocked $100 off the price of that entry-level iPad from its previous price. I'm not sure about that, but it's still a good price, I think.
It is. And I'm not going to talk about the Apple Pencil. Apparently there's 4 versions of the Apple Pencil available now. I cannot even begin to get my head around that. Not that I'd ever use one anyway, so I don't care.
We're still waiting to hear from any of our listeners that have used a pencil in anything on a Windows laptop or an iPad or any tablet that find a use for that.
Yeah. Interesting stuff, though, but that's the updates from Apple this week. Definitely could have warranted an event, I think. But
no way. No, it's a processor bump across the board.
Let's talk about Mobile World Congress. It's just wrapped up in Barcelona, and Chris Lewis is the founder and director of Lewis Insight. He has been there for the week, and he joins us now from his home in West London in the UK. He is telling us all about Mobile World Congress from his position in the telecommunications industry as an industry analyst. That's not easy to say. Chris Lewis, great to have you here on Double Tap with us.
It is so nice to be here. Having listened to so many of your interactions over the last wee while, it's lovely to be part of it.
Yeah, listen, Chris, you're a great guy, and thank you so much for giving us your time, because I know how busy you must be. Of course, you have just returned from Mobile World Congress. Maybe we start off by explaining to people what Mobile Congress is.
Oh, sure. So it's, in simple terms, it's the biggest telecoms technology event, I think they'd like to say, in the world. But over 100,000 people turn up in Barcelona, 8 massive aircraft hangar size halls, all of the mobile providers, the service providers, the people who provide the technology to them, the people who make the devices, increasingly the people who do satellite, the people who make robots. I mean, it's just a vast show, absolutely enormous.
Yeah, huge. And, a great place to connect, I guess, for someone in your field in telecommunications. Is this what it's about for you?
Absolutely. So my day job as an analyst, looking at the telecom industry and all the dynamics, all the trends within it, I basically fill up my agenda from dusk till dawn, or the other way around, dawn till dusk, just with meeting with all these people that influence and shape the industry. So I tend not to focus on the device side. I'm much more on the telecom infrastructure and the service providers themselves. But at the moment, it's such a rich area for development. Obviously connectivity has got better and better with mobile and fixed. And we should always mention the fixed side, because it is important. And then the whole development of the networks, of cloud, and of course AI coming in now as the big change agent. And I spend all day over there just talking to people about how this is all likely to pan out for consumers and for businesses, and frankly for society. And then my other interest, I spend a lot of time looking at accessibility and inclusion, or exclusion, to be more correct, and that creeps into the conversations increasingly, which is great. It never used to be on the agenda. It's now much more there as another topic to discuss.
It's interesting you mentioned exclusion, and then you also talked there about fixed landline solutions as well, which is something we seem to be, I would say, getting away from. I don't know if we are getting away from it.
No, we're not. And thank you for calling it landlines. You make me feel very, very young calling it landlines. So the broadband world, from an analyst point of view, the fixed and the mobile are equally important. And certainly the way in which we use things in our home offices, like this is my home environment here in West London. I know you're the same. It's critical. Yeah, I don't want to do it over the mobile network. I want to do it over fixed. But of course, Mobile World Congress is much more oriented towards the mobile side. But of course, then the disruptor on that is satellite. So the low Earth orbit satellites that have been brought in by various well-known entities, and increasingly popular and beginning to touch upon the mobile market. I've got bumped into a very old colleague who now lives in Greece, on his island in Greece, with his satellite connection, which gives him a couple of 100 meg, not synchronous, but pretty good connectivity. Runs his business, runs his life from there via a satellite connection.
Yeah, I mean, it's incredible, isn't it? But, the exclusion part comes in for a lot of people who rely on those landline phones. and are learning that, essentially digital is coming in and taking over. The copper wire is kind of going away. They're moving towards digital. And that is there's a bit of an undercurrent of conversation on this going on. Did this come up at all at Mobile World Congress about the changeover and how it's impacting people?
No, but what you're talking about is what we call the PSTN switch off, the old telephone network switch off. And it has come up, and I noticed here in the UK, BT delayed it for a while because they were having some issues with the new digital devices that were going to connect through another device, so making it a bit clunky for people. But yes, it's fundamentally the telecoms organizations need to switch off that copper, not because they need to sell the copper, but they will do, and they'll make a nice profit from selling the copper, but actually just the sheer cost of management, putting fiber in the ground, which many people find their streets being dug, which is another issue for blind people, by the way. Trying to navigate around while the engineers are digging your streets is quite a challenge. But no, fundamentally, they have to do it as a cost reduction and a quality improvement, by the way. So that having the add-ons that people are excluded. So obviously the emergency tags that go around people's necks, those things were working on that. But of course, at the same time, the mobile network is getting more and more reliable. That I accept there are people who don't have connectivity in certain parts of the world, but actually that's where satellite will fill in those gaps in the future.
Well, I think we're old enough to remember when, your phone used to tell you, don't rely on this mobile phone in an emergency. You were always encouraged to use your landline only for that. Whereas you're right, the mobile network is stronger than it's ever been. In fact, in some cases, it's being relied on as a backup when internet fails. People are relying on their 4G or their 5G connections to stay connected at all times. Some people even perhaps moving away entirely from fixed broadband connections.
Oh, they have. No, there's a significant move away from having that fixed broadband connection. I'm not one of them because running my business, I need to rely on it, and mobile can get a bit feisty. But of course, what you need to remember in other countries, actually in Canada, which are obviously close to your heart, the coverage is essential to using satellite to get it to all those non-connected areas, non-covered areas for sheer geographic reasons. So yeah, it's a big change. The network rollout, the telcos have been a bit slow, perhaps you'd say, to roll it out in many places. But yeah, we need the fixed line. Actually, I don't even have a phone connected to my fixed connection anymore.
No,
I rely purely. But you also have to remember in countries, certainly let's say in the emerging markets like in Africa and Asia, actually the ratio of mobile to fixed is many, many more times to one than it is in places like UK and Canada, where we've had a reliable fixed infrastructure, which I say is moving over to fiber. But yeah, so a lot of people rely on it as their main source of connectivity. Their mobile device is their main connectivity, and they tether a laptop if they have a laptop or tablet to that.
So, I mean, lots of topics came up, of course, the theme being AI, I imagine, because it's everywhere. We'll talk about that, but I want to talk about 5G. Where are we with 5G? Because it seems different in different parts of the world, the rollout and the achievability of the speeds that we hoped we would get with 5G.
What's really interesting, and this is the geopolitical comment without even mentioning a certain gentleman, that the US has had rapid rollout of 5G and successful rollout of 5G with using a capitalist system based on three very large providers, absolutely huge providers. China told its providers how to do it 5 or 10 years ago. They've got phenomenal penetration of 5G. And then Europe is very much staggered, fragmented because of European regulation. So 5G in its basic form was not a lot better than 4G. What we now call 5G standalone is rolling out, but it's still only available in 50-odd countries around the world, and then not uniformly everywhere. So the benefits that we were supposed to get of having much higher connectivity, much even more focused things that would really get close into a lot of the business applications haven't really materialized. They're beginning to, but the whole business model for 5G has not really been that successful. So telcos are a bit reluctant to talk about the next generation now because they really want to leverage 5G as it stands. But you'll find it in many places. I'm sure you find, like I do, you flip between 5G and 4G. And then when you drop down to 3G, you get really depressed because, most of your apps won't work.
Yeah.
But it happens, I mean, and that's the problem we have, is that the industry, especially at an event like NWC, is focused on the glitz and glamour of the next greatest thing. And actually, we want to make sure that you can put your delivery order through, or whatever your preferred means of ordering food is.
So what happens to 5G? Does it become the Windows Vista of telecommunications and we just move on to 6G and just forget about it? Is that how
No,
it
I don't think so. No, it's going to absolutely be the workhorse for the industry for years to come. So we tend to work in 10-year cycles with the mobile, with cellular connectivity, and I think we might just stretch 5G. And because we're moving to be more software defined rather than hardware defined, it will allow us a much smoother migration to whatever happens next. In fact, with many in the industry say, can we just stop you calling it Gs, because it builds up this expectation that something fundamental is going to change, which it did from 3 to 4. It hasn't from 4 to 5. But when 5 is completed and rolled everywhere, then we probably will see the benefit of it. And frankly, AI might be one of those beneficiaries, because if we have that reliable connectivity, depending on where we do that AI processing, then that will be better for all of us. Because one of the big discussions in Barcelona and over the last probably 6-12 months has been, we've got these large language models sitting in the great big data centers that we're pinging back. If you use Be My Eyes, it pings back to ChatGPT's own data center. We will increasingly do some of that on the device. We'll increasingly do that some of the edge, because the market won't stay global. It will go much more local, partly for sovereign issues within the different territories in which we live and work, partly just because frankly, as an industry, we can't afford to carry all that traffic backwards and forwards. It will multiply traffic loads enormously if we were to do that.
And what is the state of AI in all of this? I mean, is it just because it feels just that we just say AI now and we just talk AI, but what does it actually mean in telco?
So there's two principal areas for it. One is improving and automating the operations within the telco. As people may or may not know, the telecom industry has been pretty inefficient. We grew up from government monopolies, and we liberated the markets in the 80s and 90s. Loads of competition, and we've never been that efficient because, frankly, you and I kept paying for it, whatever happened. So there is an efficiency push, which is partly goes back to that putting fiber in the ground and standardizing on 5G for the mobile side, and then the AI piece. So AI traffic will be used to manage the network better, and then the other side is probably more relevant to us as individuals, is how we build the customer interaction, customer experience. And we, especially things like ChatGPT and this new wave of agents and agentic AI, which will basically be little soldiers that go off and do tasks for us and deliver an outcome, sometimes with human intervention, often without human intervention. So we need to make sure we get that set up correctly. And I think we've now decided the collective is it's a swarm of agents, Stephen. I think you'd like a swarm.
A swarm. That's a lovely word to use in the mix of that.
Swarm inside the network, and they swarm all over what we do. So the state of AI is actually confusing as hell to everybody, because it will be part of every interaction we have in the future, and perhaps depending on an individual's ability, you'll up it or down the amount of AI within it. But certainly from my perspective, and if I like the term disaggregated AI, because it means that it's not one great big thing, which I think is what scares people.
Yeah.
But it will be utilized in different parts of the value chain, including facing us. And as we know from Be My Eyes and Seeing AI and the like, those things are there that they can really help us, because they allow us to interpret the world around us. I use it a lot. I did use it again in a hotel to help try and set the temperature control in my room, because I was freezing in my room in Barcelona, and called up a human to do it, not the AI version of it.
Yeah.
So it is incredibly useful, and it will just impact, and it will take away a lot of that heavy lifting, obviously in terms of data gathering and research that when we're looking for things, that interface will change, and I think that the ability to hop between different sorts of interactions. Certainly, if we can't use vision, then there's a very good high quality audio to be used in there, and the haptic feedback that will also be part of it. It will just become a very rich environment to work in.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to pick up on one thing actually on this, because you mentioned audio, and when it comes to call quality, that is something we're starting to see an improvement on in regular calls. And Nokia were showing off some rather cool tech, which involved spatial audio coming from the person you were talking to. Have a listen to this. We'll talk on the other side of this. This is a spokesperson for Nokia talking at MWC this week.
Current voice calls today, everything is monophonic. So spatial audio means like you can hear all the sounds around you. So immersively, you can have head tracking, so turning your head and that way to experience everything around you, just like you, like you would be there on the other side. You can experience that in the phone calls. And we do have a user interface with pre-recorded material where you can hear everything's happening on the other side. This is like a remote assistant type of use case where you can also then adjust how much you want to hear the voice of that person versus then just the background noises to analyze what's wrong maybe there and give better assistance for the person there.
Yeah, I mean, that's so cool, right? The idea that you can get spatial audio on the other side of a call, that could change a lot of cool things.
I think obviously, during COVID, we experienced the Zoom and Teams and the like calls and the frustration where quality perhaps wasn't as good as we'd like it to be. You want to be immersed in a conversation, don't you? And I think I think the reliability on good quality, obviously microphones, the earbuds and whatever headsets that we wear, but the whole point of communication is transmission of information, and it's the better quality that surrounds you when you're listening. You find yourself, obviously, I don't look at the screen anymore. I can't pick up any visual prompts, but actually listening in when someone's presenting and trying to get an idea across to you or having that interaction, higher quality, the better. And in some ways, voice has been relegated during lots of the discussions as we've gone into the digital era. And actually now, partly because of things like spatial audio that Nokia just talked about, and the availability of devices that give us feed that content into our heads much more clearly. It becomes a greater experience and a much more enjoyable one. There's nothing worse than, and I must confess, I now wear hearing aids on occasions, especially in meetings in noisy environments. And there is nothing more frustrating than always straining to hear what people are saying. Mm-hmm. And you can only imagine it, and you'll see it when you go to CSUN, when you're in a large noisy environment and they say, come into our meeting room, and the meeting room's up on the top of a booth and all the sound from around it, and they're blasting music out from the ZTE stand and the drones flying from the T-Mobile stand and China, and the dancers are coming out on the Honor Global stand. It's just very difficult to block that sound out.
Yeah.
So I think blocking sound out is almost as important as actually having the clear. But things like, I just, by the way, got hold of the Apple AirPod Pro 2s with a bit of the hearing aid facility in them, and it just makes such a difference because you do want to block out. There's that focus on the voice function. You want to hear the conversation. You want to block out the background sound. All these things which are sort of hearing aid, which would have cost thousands of pounds for you to get hold of, now part of a pair of earbuds, which is phenomenal.
And like you say, it's not always about, I mean, in your case, obviously you need those hearing aids, but for someone like myself who doesn't need hearing aids, wearing those actually just dulls the environment to a much more enjoyable level. And there are already reports of kids with autism, adults with autism really benefiting from the ability to dull those background noises, to dull any loud noises as well, because of course it's adaptive. So, being on a subway, for example, or a tube, you can really notice the difference. The experience is actually better. And, live listen as well, being able to focus in and listen into an individual. These are really useful tools that we can all benefit from. You don't have to be deaf or hard of hearing to benefit from them. And it's the same thing we talk about with visual impairment. You don't have to be blind, turning up or just raising the text size a little bit on your phone can make it just that little bit easier. Accessibility is for everyone.
Yeah, that's certainly what I've been looking at with my other work around the inclusion-exclusion argument, is that in the past we designed things for visually impaired people. I used to use a very clunky CCTV to be able to read when I could see a bit.
Yeah.
And what's happening now as we move to this more software-centric world is actually we can design things which actually cover different disabilities. So obviously the elderly market is a big theme because people tend to have hearing problems and sight problems and cognitive issues as well. So I think there are that universal design principle, that inclusive design, where we don't design just for the center of the market, we design for the edge, for the periphery. And by covering all those peripheral cases, then we've got the center covered anyway. It's a very, very powerful argument. And I know certainly that's things I've discussed with many players across the industry. And in my telecom world, trying to get them to think about that when they're designing the way we interact, the way we get our bills, the way we interact with mobile providers is something. Just think about the way that everybody might want to interact at different times, and they get it. But it's a bit of a longer journey.
Just one final question for you, Chris, because I want to focus in on one thing, and that is the accessibility side of MWC, because we know at CES now they have a huge component of accessibility now. They've really embedded it into, the ethos of CES. They talk about it, they have events, they have lots of discussion, panels. Any of that going on at MWC?
There is, but as I mentioned, my day job is really around the telecom industry, so I wasn't attending those things. What the organizers have done, which is good, is, and I usually meet with them every year and in between to talk about it, is making sure the app is more accessible, making sure the website is more accessible. And for the first time this year, they had a navigator in there which actually would tell you how long it would take you, how many steps it would take you, and how to get from stand to stand.
Oh, that's good.
Which is a big improvement, because that hadn't been available before at all. And certainly there is plenty in the past. I literally bumped into Neil Milliken last year at MWC, who was speaking on the accessibility and inclusion panels. And I know Hector from Microsoft was there this year attending various panels. But as I say, the problem is it's so vast. I mean, my interest cuts across everything, but I have to focus down on the things, where my clients are, the ones who are currently paying me. So
yes.
I spend my time with them. And actually, there is one issue around that, which is that still in my world of talking to people around technology, getting paid for doing work around accessibility inclusion is still a bit of a challenge.
Yeah,
that they still think, oh, it's charity. I go, which of course it's what charities are involved in it heavily, but in people, the work that people like myself do around it is, we need to get paid for it in order to keep promoting it and keep pushing it. It's not purely philanthropic.
100% comes up a lot in our show. Listen, it's been great to get your insight on this, Chris Lewis. Thank you so much for coming on to the show. Come back soon. Let's talk more about that inclusion and exclusion discussion, because that needs to be had.
It does. Pleasure, absolute pleasure, Stephen. Keep up the great work. Thanks a lot. Bye now.
Thank you, Chris. Chris Lewis there, of course, founder and director of Lewis Insight. And he is a guy who you'll always find popping up talking about telecommunications in various places around the world. And, of course, most notably at Mobile World Congress. Very interesting event, as tends to happen. It used to be a place, Shaun, where I think a lot of the big announcements used to be held. You would expect Samsung to make announcements there. You would expect other companies to. You tend to find it's smaller companies making announcements now, and way more than phones now, of course. It's all about gadgets, gizmos, robots. Robotics is a big deal, and that's just going to increase and increase and increase over, especially the lead up towards big companies bringing these out for real.
Oh, of course, yes. It has got a little bit of a reputation now that this is where you see all the wacky concept stuff, right? But
like there's
Yeah, exactly. But there is still a lot of serious work going on, at the core of it there. And it's still actually really important. And if you want to know where the trends are going and where the industry is going, it's people like this that really lead the way. Does a great job. Yeah.
I just love hearing about it all. I love learning about all the different things. I mean, Nokia there showcasing this new spatial audio down the phone. I mean, I can't get my head around this, but essentially you wear your headphones or you're wearing your AirPods, for example, and you're on a call with someone, and I can literally turn my head around and hear the environment that you are in. And I just find that amazing. That sounds incredible.
It does sound incredible, but you're thinking, okay, in practical terms, how's that going to work? But it's one of those technologies you don't know till you try it. It's a little bit like, it's not the same at all, but it's a little bit like when 3D audio went to Clubhouse. I always thought, well, what's the point of that? But it wasn't until you actually use it, I think, actually, this makes the experience so much better.
Can you imagine being on a call with someone, right? So let's say I'm on the call with you, right? I'm sitting here in the house and you're outside with the dog, and you're saying to me, you're chatting away, and I say, Shaun, there's someone behind you.
Yeah.
Like, there's someone walking up behind you right now.
You say that to me just to scare me all the time anyway.
I'm doing more of that. But that could be quite interesting, right? I mean, I don't mean for that purpose, but I just mean enjoying the atmosphere, or it could be, hey Shaun, I'm in Spain all of a sudden, and listen to this,
Well, there's the whole point of enhancing the experience of connecting to someone rather than a terribly sounding audio call. It could sound like you're with someone having that conversation, which enhances the experience anyway. But there could be practical terms here. So yeah, it's interesting
makes
technology.
conference calls better, that's for sure. Or does it? I don't know.
Yes.
I tend to hate conference calls anyway. But look, just before we go, quick mention. I mentioned earlier about that watch feature. I just wanted to mention, because I just had a note there, that actually this you'll find in the watch app under settings. You'll find under VoiceOver, then speech. And under speech is where you'll find the option for improved speech clarity. And if you turn that on, it will allow your VoiceOver to get louder when it's outside. It will adjust itself. Or if you turn it off, it'll remain as is. So if you've been having problems with fluctuating voice and volume, and I know we have had for a while, there was a bug that was causing a problem, but now we can enable that bug. We can choose it. It's an optional
Wasn't a bug. It was a feature
all along. So yeah, that's where you'll find it under Apple Watch app, and this is on the phone. I'm talking about in the Watch app there. And going to be playing with a lot of different apps over the next couple of days, because of course we'll be in transit soon for CSUN. So an 11-hour flight is a perfect time to play with new apps, isn't it?
Yes, we got time. 12 hours or whatever it's going to be.
A new piece of hardware that's making its way all the way from Korea at the moment for me. If it arrives tomorrow, I'll tell you about it. If not, I'll tell you about it next week. But let's just say I think Greg in Pennsylvania is going to be very happy with me for once.
Oh, yes, that's right.
We'll talk about that next week. But to tomorrow, we'll be delving back into the inbox. Check out the show for that. For now, though, thank you so much for listening. Thank you, Shaun.
Thank you. Bye-bye.